This 1.5-inch conduit right here is going to come up right underneath the meter base that's hanging on the outside of the garage, and we're going to run a set of number 2 wires through this conduit from the meter base to here, and it'll that's the right size for this particular installation. So, and there'll be a breaker up there, and there'll also be a cutoff here. And so I needed 7 spaces, so I got an 8 space sub panel, and I just did 100 amps is more than what we need here, but it gives you room to grow into things if you know, we want to add things later or whatever. We'll probably use about 35 amps. That's maxed out, everything running, which is unlikely to happen at any one given time. But you're supposed to size your panel for, you know, like 20% more than what your max would be, plus room for growth. If we want to add solar panels on the roof, which I do want to do eventually, and then we'll get a grid intertie inverter, and then I've already talked to the Flathead Electric Co-op, and for $200 they will install a net meter, which runs backwards when we're overproducing power, you know, above and beyond what we can use right at that moment, and then we can draw it back into our system when we need it. And so that way we could connect our solar panel directly to the grid, and if the grid goes down and they've got workers, it shuts our inverter off, because you don't want to be pumping electricity into the main lines when you've got service people working on the lines, because they could get shocked. So we're building the forms right now for the doorways. This is going to go on top of the first course of bags that are foundational bags, and we're pour concrete in this form to create a nice concrete threshold, so that when we're walking in and out of the door, it'll have a nice solid base. Looks pretty good. Alright, so we've got some concrete in our form here for the door threshold, and you don't want to get on it with steel trowel too soon. When it's real wet like this, you want to use wood, and also you want to tap your forms, because it helps the cement or the concrete to consolidate down in and all mesh together, and it'll make it a smoother surface on the edge. On the side, when you strip the forms off, you won't get big voids. If you don't tap it or work it down, then you could have big empty pockets. I don't know, sometimes you've seen that in the side of a concrete wall.
Yeah, you get air bubbles.
We cover the bags at the end of every day because they're polypropylene plastic sacks, and the sun is hard on the bags and will weaken the fibers of weakens the plastic, and so they'll fall apart. So by covering them, we'll protect the bags until we can get them covered with the plaster, cob plaster that we're going to use. So it's important to cover your bags while you're working on the building, and it also keeps the moisture out if it rains. And we have clay in the bags. We don't want that getting wet. We want to keep the bags dry. An earth tube is a large pipe. Well, it doesn't have to be large, but the bigger the pipe, the more volume of air it'll hold. And so earth tubes, since they're buried in the ground, the air in the tube will be about the same temperature as the earth, which is anywhere from 45 to 50 degrees, maybe 55. So it stays very constant, and it's cool. And so you can use it for cooling. And like in the greenhouse, when we open the roof vents and let the hot air out, it'll create a natural convection, and it'll pull that cool air in from the earth tube, because the earth tube will be daylighted out kind of in the woods here where it's in the shade. And this particular 6-inch line I took the opportunity when we had the utility trench in, when we brought the water lines in, to put this 6-inch pipe under my crawl space in the house because the upstairs gets a little warm and we don't have air conditioning. So I'm going to connect this 6-inch pipe to the earth tube at this end, and at the other end I'll bring it into the intake air for the furnace, or the cold air return. And then we can just run our fan and circulate that cool air in our house during the summertime and have a more natural type of air conditioning. The first thing we're going to do is take this 6-inch line and put this coupler in, and then there's more of it up there. We're going to extend this over to the north end of the greenhouse so that later we can tie it into our earth tube. Oh. So we're going to get ready to lay the insulation. There's a 2-inch rigid blue board that's going to go down underneath the climate battery so that we can keep the heat in our floor system rather than having it escape into the ground. We have groundwater very close, just about 6 inches down at high water is the water table on this particular site. So I want to keep our heat away from that because the water will steal the heat away from the climate battery. So this edge, you can see where we've been laying our 2 layers of earth bags. These are the foundational courses. And I'm going to slope this down so it's nice and flat so that the insulation will fit nicely and tight to the soil. And then we'll do a joint at the bottom. The angle doesn't really matter. What matters here is that this is a nice flat plane, and then it's going to join with the flat surface in the center. So we'll do a square of totally flat in the center, and then we'll have an angled sheet that'll come up like this. We're putting our insulation board on the ground underneath the climate battery. And with this, it's a 2-inch rigid blue board. We can just score one side with a knife and break it like that. Kind of like cutting sheetrock. And then it'll land. Shock. So if we're going to try to do it without too many gaps, and if there's gaps, like in some places there's going to be little gaps. Because we've got irregularities and stuff, so we've got some spray foam. We'll just fill the gaps with spray foam. Also, I'm going to do a double layer of foam on the ground because we have a water table that's real close and I want to insulate that well. So I'm doing 4 inches, so we'll overlap it in different places. The joints will be in different places on each layer. So we are now putting in the manifold for the climate battery, which is in the floor. And the manifold's made up of this 8-inch ADS culvert, plastic culvert. And we've drilled 4-inch holes because we're going to connect this culvert with the culvert over there. And we're going to connect it with 4-inch ADS drain pipe that's perforated. So this is the inlet to the climate battery, and it's an 8-inch vertical pipe, and it ties into an 8-inch horizontal pipe. These are just ADS culverts. It's a plastic culvert that you could buy, and it's a lot less money than a galvanized iron culvert. This will be extended up to the roof of the greenhouse and then up to the ridge. And at the end, we're going to have a inline fan that's actually, it's a 6-inch fan it's for blowing radon, exhausting radon out of a house. And we're just going to use it to blow the warm air from the ridge into the floor. We did the calculations on how much air we needed to move to circulate the air through the floor. And that's how we sized the fan. We got the right CFM. So this piece of concrete behind here is the threshold for the walk door that goes out the back of the greenhouse, or out the side of the greenhouse. And we've got an aquaponic trough on both sides, and then these 4 pipes are coming up. And the reason I have them coming up here is that there's going to be, we're going to form out a rectangular box here, and it'll have a metal grate in the top of it, so that when you walk in the door, you can scrape the mud off of your shoes. And these pipes are going to have a 90-degree turn. They're going to be cut down lower, and they'll have a 90-degree, and it'll go in the side of that box. And that way, these are the exhaust from the manifold, and the warm air that's lost most of its heat in the drain rock, but there'll be some warmth to it. It'll just come out and radiate up from that floor grate, and that seemed like a good place to have that return into the greenhouse. You gave him a bath?